Hi, my name is Winsley, and welcome to my video discussing the 11th Dev Diary for Age of Wonders 4. This one is covering the art, and I have to say I really enjoyed looking at all of the art, and I thought that the way they promoted this Dev Diary on Twitter was pretty cool. They did it with a little riddle. The riddle was, "I'm a universal language understood by everyone. What am I?" And the answer is art. I didn't see that immediately, but it makes a lot of sense. That's pretty fun and creative. There's less little nuggets or gems of information that are going to change how people approach the game mechanically, but I think, there's still a lot of cool fun things that are worth pointing out here. For example, they mention Stellaris right here in the Dev Diary pretty early on. The fact that Stellaris has all those unique 2D portraits is a point that they use to kind of inspire them to try and do something a bit different, to try and make 3D versions of that. And a lot of people thought it was a high risk and a bit crazy, but with a lot of prototyping, they were able to find a way to make it work. And I'm really glad they did that because I think like testing yourselves, challenging yourselves to try something different like that, it's usually worth it because getting comfortable means that you get lazy, and it's pretty easy to become less relevant when that kind of thing happens. I think this is great, and that it's going to be really fun to play around with once we get our hands on all the different systems that we have here. Um, they mentioned how you can make lots of different combinations and then went to show off what they look like. There's a couple things in here that I hadn't seen before. For example, the one I really, really like is this skull, because somebody was asking me if you can be a tomb king. Yeah, a tomb king from Warhammer. And I think starting off with a leader that looks like a skeleton would really help with that kind of role play. I don't know if all of your units will look like that. I have a feeling that that isn't the case, but it is a nice thing to give people the ability to play around with. I don't know if I'd seen like the spiky helmet or like the thing next to that, or even like this. Oh, that's not a toad. What are these guys? They're one of the new forms. The moles, I think. The moles look great. We haven't seen too many of them shown off, as well as like a couple of these helmets and crowns. So yeah, it's cool that um, we got to see a few more of them here. They showed off some of the design process, what they had before they got to where we are now, and it's funny. Some of these things really remind me of Elder Scrolls. Like for example, this looks like the Dragonborn helmet down here. Although I don't think that one made it into the base game. It seems like they wanted to take some inspiration from like Stellaris and maybe some other games like Elder Scrolls. Skyrim, that's right. That's what that one was called. Elder Scrolls 4, I believe, maybe 5. I can't even remember the numbers anymore. We have a couple different forms here: toads, uh, cat people, tigrans, and then I think that's humanoid right there. They talked about how you can make them taller and shorter, and kind of come up with your own variation of of a traditional thing that you've seen in fantasy. And I don't know. It's like it's neat that they gave you the ability to do that or go off in a completely new direction. For example, that dwarven mystic unit there, that's kind of like an elven dwarf, is really really fun. And I'm a big fan of like subverting expectations, being like, oh yeah, this is a dwarf, but he's not like your normal dwarf. He was raised differently, which really leans into the whole culture thing. Like that's how you make your guys different. It makes sense a lot to me, like not everybody within uh, a certain species would approach things the same way. They'd have their own like upbringings and such. It's like nature and nurture type questions, right? Um, the barbarian unit art is pretty interesting here because I think it says something at the bottom about the range units being called furies or furries. I doubt it's furries, but it looks like furries. I think furries has two R's, but I think that that would be a really funny name to include in the game. I don't believe I've seen that in game. They've got something about that Pathfinder unit. You can like ride the wolves, and they were thinking about that pretty early on in the game. There's the shock units, which is how you knock people out of defensive mode. It's usually people on horses, but it doesn't have to be. So this must have been like them thinking about, okay, shock units, they can be something other than a horse. Evolutions are something that we actually got to see in today's stream, they evolved a spider into a matriarch, like a baby spider into like the T3, which can make more spiders in combat, a pretty useful unit. I think they keep switching between referring to enchantments and transformations as evolutions and using evolutions to define what they used to refer to as evolutions, which I think is pretty confusing. It made me feel like they'd taken evolutions out of the game when I initially was reading sections like this. But I think they're very different, and it's worth pointing that out. I also noticed a few times that they used the word bespoke, and that's a word as an English speaker I've literally never seen before reading these dev diaries, and it seems very common over at Triumph, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it's a common English word, but it's new to me. I had to look up the definition. It means custom. These evolutions here are more referring to like how when you go into your tomes, you can give your guys like flaming axes or devil wings or goat legs, and that's pretty fun. But if you wanted to do a different permutation, you have the ability to make your weapons frosty, and then give your guys kind of like shadow magic or golden armor. A lot of different things can be applied to your people based off like the culture and the tomes, and I think your interactions with quests in the world and the strategic layer. There's also the ability to get these weapons, which will change like what your character's holding, or I think some of the things around them. If you give them a little helmet, it'll change what they have on their head, but you can toggle that off, I believe. I think there's a little button that says no, don't cover the face. Um, what else do we have here? You can adjust the appearance later if you feel like it. You can click down on the bottom right where it's got that purple adjust appearance. Just say, okay, you know what? I've changed the way this leader operates. I want them to look appropriate for that. They're no longer a wizard. They're now a melee unit. They should probably look a little bit more like martially or armored or something like that. We got a nice picture of the concept art here. Seems pretty straightforward. Next, we have a side by side of the color palette from Age of Wonders 3 and the color palette for Age of Wonders 4. The Age of Wonders 3 was kind of supposed to feel Renaissance-y industrialization. I remember they had the Dreadnought class with a lot of tank type units. That was like a big theme for Age of Wonders 3. And I have to say, I think the one on the right is much more approachable. The one on the left kind of like makes me feel like dusk, like I'm falling asleep, and the one on the right makes me feel like it's morning, like I'm waking up. And I don't just think that's because it's 7:25 over here for me. I mean, maybe it is, but I like it. It's very inviting, and I can't wait to actually like experience the world. I'm so eager. It's so soon. It's like a month away now. We have our world next, where they talk about Romanticism being an inspiration for how the world map should look, being gritty but vibrant, with lots of ancient wonders and mountains and moving things like bats and leaves and um, I guess other details like birds just moving across the map, which worries me from a technical standpoint. I know my computer's not like a high-end computer, um, but I have a feeling like out of all the things you could be doing with the graphics engine, this isn't the worst, and I might be able to toggle it off or turn it down. It looks lovely, don't get me wrong. I love it, but it worries me because Age of Wonders Planetfall is one of the more intense games that I actually play on this thing, and yeah, I'm really curious to see how it handles Age of Wonders 4. Um, there's some upgrades to the creator engine. So yeah, the Fog of War looks more volumetric. There's something about modding I think they mentioned in here. This is lovely. This looks like, yeah, something you'd see maybe in an art gallery or something. Something that somebody poured hours into. We have this living world. This is the motion we are talking about, the butterflies, the leaves falling, all those fun things. You can expand your cities with special provinces, and they have 3D art to make them look more unique. It's going to evolve over time. This is a T1 city that evolves into something far more complex as you build things in it. I think that purple building must be something like the Wizard's Tower, one of the late game units, or not units, one of the late game buildings. It could be something that I'm forgetting off the top of my mind. Now we have some really awesome art, which I'm like, I think I want to use this one for the thumbnail or this one. They look fantastic. I can't decide. Readability is, they say, an improvement. I thought Age of Wonders Planetfall was clear. I thought it was awesome. I loved the UI and the interface. I thought that it was really smart and they did some great things, especially with like thresholds and numbers. But I guess from a visual point of view, maybe it could have been clearer. I definitely miss pickups all the time, just fly right by them. And then when I'm looking back in the fog of war, I'm like, actually, wait, that's a pickup. I see it now, but not when I was there and it was all bright. Hopefully in Age of Wonders 4 that kind of thing has been addressed. There's more like mountain peaks lifting up further up into the map. The mist is a little bit, it feels like it takes up more of the space. It feels like yeah, like it's a bigger part of your experience when you're looking at the map. And yeah, I think we can just move on to combat maps now. This is really interesting, the pictures that they show off here, because this is one location, a gold node, with different biomes. If you go in there with an Arctic biome, it's going to look different than a Mediterranean or a temperate or a highlands or a desert, tropical, desolate, or underground. I love the underground. Actually, I hadn't noticed that it's got these little carts going through it. Oh man, what, can you get in the cart and roll around for extra movement? That's great. That's really fun. Makes me wonder if what else could be in here. They do mention that you're gonna have like clover hexes giving luck in the temperate biome and maybe poisonous plants in the tropics, which is fun. So it's gonna be different based off of your biome and just like pretty much every time you generate a new random thing, it's gonna likely be different than what you've seen recently. So it's just gonna feel refreshing and fun to play around with. What else do we have here? So a closer look at a couple of these maps with units in them. And man, I love this. This is looks like it's going to be really good for taking screenshots. I hope there's a little bit more camera control than there was in Age of Wonders Planetfall, because I did find a lot of the time that I couldn't zoom in enough to get enough of like their point of view type screenshot. Most of it was top down, and these seem to be close to the angle that I was like the limit where you can go closer and get more of like a looking in front of a unit than looking top down. But who knows? Maybe they've allowed some more of that kind of stuff in this next one. If not, I would love it if they considered putting stuff in that and in the game like that. Just a little bit more camera freedom. There's a mention here that certain houses will have different looks based on their biome. Like if you're in the snow, the house might have a little bit of snow on top of it. Um, but yeah, I can't tell if there's anything on the left on here. Just looks like a normal house, right? Inhabitants are really fun. I love this joke about how these ogres here are called internally. They call them Gordon and Ramsay. What good names! I want to use that. I think these are the brewer ones that they talked about in the last stream. How they don't drink anything alcoholic. They drink something non-disclosed. It's it's fun. It's something that I want to like. I want those units of my empire to see if they're as fun to play with as they are to like read about and think about. Next, we have just like some of the other things you can get from Ancient Wonders, like golems, skeletons, astral invaders, and you should be able to recruit them like you can these ogres using the Rally of the Lieges mechanic. After that, they show off a swamp troll and a couple of the images of some of the like later units that you can play around with. Um, these are animations. You can view the units, even apply things. Um, yeah, using the in-game encyclopedia, they're just basically mentioning that you have an in-game encyclopedia that helps you look up these fun different units. And I don't know if you've seen this one yet. That one seems new to me. Everything else I think we've seen once or twice before. After that, they kind of have this compilation of all the community creations that they've come by, a lot of clever tome ideas, illustrations of the dev diaries, like the drowned toads, as well as ideas for units and DLC cultures. That means they're actually considering putting that in the game, which I love. I think, some people would be worried about doing something like that like the community wouldn't be a fan of that. But I think that this is a good way to get new ideas. This is a fun way to get ideas that weren't something you've already thought of, but fits the theme really well. And I'm sure the community would just be ecstatic if their idea was incorporated. I know I would be if something I thought of appeared in game after I thought of it and mentioned it. I'd be so happy. And the last thing we can talk about are these screenshots that they are wallpapers that they shared. You can download these four things if you go to the website and check out the dev diary. Um, look phenomenal. I'll probably put on my one of those on my computer right after I'm done here. And yeah, I don't think they mentioned anything about what's coming up next week, so we can wrap this up here. Thanks for joining me. Have a good one.